The moment I knew my best friend was trying to steal my entire life, I was standing in my own kitchen, holding a coffee mug she had given me for my birthday, watching her laugh at something my husband said, while her hand lingered just a second too long on his arm. It was such a small gesture, most people would have missed it. But I had known Rebecca Holloway for 26 years, and in that single moment, every strange occurrence from the past 18 months suddenly clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle I had been too blind to see. The woman I had trusted with my deepest secrets, the woman who had been my maid of honor, the woman I considered closer than a sister, was systematically trying to replace me in my own marriage, in my own home, in my own life, and the most terrifying part was how close she had already come to succeeding. But I am getting ahead of myself. To truly understand the depth of this betrayal and the lengths I eventually went to ensure justice, I need to take you back to the beginning, back to when Rebecca Holloway was just Becca, my shy, awkward best friend from Mrs. Patterson's third-grade class in suburban Connecticut. Becca and I met when we were 8 years old. She was the new girl, transferred mid-year because her parents had just gone through a messy divorce and her mother had moved them across town to start fresh. I remember her standing alone at recess, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, watching the other kids play as if she were observing creatures from another planet. Something about her loneliness called to me. My mother had always said I had a helper's heart, and maybe that was true because I walked right up to Rebecca Holloway and asked if she wanted to share my fruit snacks. From that day forward, we were inseparable. Through elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college, where we both attended Boston University, Becca was my constant. She was there when my parents divorced during my sophomore year of high school. I was there when her mother remarried a man who made Becca feel like an intruder in her own home. We told each other everything. We planned our futures together. We swore we would be in each other's weddings, be godmothers to each other's children, grow old together, drinking wine and laughing about our younger years. What I did not fully understand then, and what took me decades to finally see, was that our friendship had always been built on an uneven foundation. I was the one with the stable home, at least until my parents split. I was the one who got good grades without struggling. I was the one who seemed to attract friends and opportunities effortlessly. And Becca, for all her charm and intelligence, always seemed to be one step behind, watching from the shadows, wanting what I had. I should have recognized the pattern earlier. In high school, Becca developed a crush on the same boy I was dating. She never acted on it, or so I thought at the time, but years later she confessed during a drunken girls' night that she had spent months fantasizing about stealing him from me. She laughed when she said it, and I laughed too, because what else do you do when your best friend admits something like that? You assume it was just teenage hormones. You assume it meant nothing. In college, Becca applied for the same internship I landed at a prestigious marketing firm. She did not get it. For weeks afterward, she was distant and cold. And when I asked her what was wrong, she said she was just stressed about finals. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I always wanted to believe the best about Rebecca Holloway. After graduation, our paths diverged slightly. I went into pharmaceutical sales, climbing the corporate ladder with determination and a work ethic my father had instilled in me before he left. Becca pursued interior design, a field she was genuinely talented in, but that proved difficult to break into. While I was earning promotions and bonuses, she was struggling to land clients, borrowing money she rarely paid back, and cycling through a series of unsuccessful relationships. I met Daniel Mitchell when I was 28 years old. He was attending a charity gala hosted by my company, looking impossibly handsome in a tailored suit, with kind eyes and a smile that made my heart skip. He was an investment banker, successful and driven, but what drew me to him was his warmth, his genuine interest in people, and the way he made me feel like I was the only person in the room when he spoke to me. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on a beach in Maui, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink as he dropped to one knee and asked me to spend my life with him. I said yes without hesitation. I thought I had found my person, the one who would stand beside me through everything life could throw at us. Becca was thrilled when I told her, or at least, she seemed thrilled. She hugged me, screamed with excitement, immediately started planning my bridal shower and bachelorette party. She was the obvious choice for maid of honor, and when I asked her, she cried and told me it was the greatest honor of her life. Looking back now, I wonder if those tears were genuine, or if she was already calculating how she might eventually step into my shoes. Our wedding was beautiful, small, intimate, held at a vineyard in Napa Valley with only our closest friends and family. Daniel's vows made me weep. Becca's toast was touching and heartfelt, filled with stories of our friendship and promises that she would always be there for us both. What I did not notice then was how often her eyes lingered on Daniel during that toast, how her voice softened when she spoke his name, how her smile tightened almost imperceptibly when he kissed me. For the first 4 years of our marriage, life was good. Daniel and I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn, then later moved to a larger home in Westchester when Daniel made partner at his firm. We talked about having children, though we kept pushing the timeline back due to our demanding careers. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life together that I thought was unshakable. Becca remained a constant presence throughout. She came to our dinner parties. She joined us on weekend trips to the Hamptons. She called me nearly every day, sometimes multiple times, always wanting to know the details of my life. I thought it was just how best friends were. I thought her interest was love. The changes started so gradually that I did not recognize them for what they were. It began about 18 months before that moment in the kitchen, around the time Becca's interior design business finally started taking off. She had landed a wealthy client who recommended her to other wealthy clients, and suddenly she was busy, successful, confident in a way I had never seen before. I was happy for her. I told everyone how proud I was of my best friend, how she had finally gotten the recognition she deserved. What I did not know was that her success had given her something dangerous, the belief that she could finally have everything she had ever wanted, including my life. The first sign I missed was the clothes. Becca had always had her own style, a bit bohemian, a bit eclectic, reflecting her artistic nature. But around this time, she started dressing differently, more polished, more sophisticated, more like me. I noticed it one evening when she arrived at our house for dinner, wearing a dress almost identical to one I had worn the previous week. When I mentioned it, she laughed and said she had seen it online and loved it too much to resist. I took it as a compliment. Then came the haircut. I had worn my hair in a shoulder-length bob for years, a style that Daniel always said suited me perfectly. 3 weeks after I got my regular trim, Becca showed up with the exact same cut, same length, same subtle layers, same shade of honey blonde that I had recently added to my natural brown. She said her stylist had suggested it. I told her it looked beautiful on her. The changes extended to her home as well. Becca had always kept her apartment decorated in a maximalist style, full of bold colours and vintage finds. But when I visited after her latest redesign, I walked into a space that could have been a copy of my own home. The same muted greys and soft whites. The same style of furniture, the same carefully curated art on the walls. When I commented on the similarity, she said my taste had always inspired her. I felt flattered instead of alarmed. Looking back, I cannot believe how naive I was. The signs were everywhere, and I explained away every single one. That is what love does. That is what trust does. It blinds you to the truth until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The first crack in my blindness came on a Tuesday evening in April. Daniel had been working late more frequently, which was not unusual during busy seasons at his firm. He would come home exhausted, barely able to stay awake through dinner, then fall asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. I understood the demands of his career. I never questioned it. But that Tuesday, I finished work early and decided to surprise him by bringing dinner to his office. I picked up his favorite Thai food, the same order he got every time, and drove into the city with excitement bubbling in my chest. The security guard at his building knew me and waved me through without a call upstairs. I took the elevator to the 32nd floor, walked past the reception desk that was empty this late in the evening, and headed toward Daniel's corner office. He was not there. His assistant, a young woman named Priya, who had always been friendly to me, was just packing up her things. She looked surprised to see me. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, her voice carrying an edge of something I could not identify. "Daniel left hours ago. He said he had a dinner meeting." A dinner meeting. He had texted me earlier saying he would be working late at the office, probably past midnight, and that I should not wait up. "A dinner meeting," I repeated, my voice steady despite the confusion churning inside me. Priya shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, with a client, I think." He did not tell me the details. I thanked her and left with the Thai food growing cold in my hands. On the drive home, I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe the dinner meeting had been last minute. Maybe he had forgotten to update me. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple miscommunication. When Daniel came home that night, smelling faintly of wine and expensive perfume, I asked him how work had been. He said exhausting. He said the quarterly reports were a nightmare. He said he had barely had time to grab a sandwich from the vending machine. He lied to my face without a flicker of hesitation, and something inside me shifted. I did not confront him that night. Instead, I watched. I paid attention in ways I had not before. And over the following weeks, the inconsistencies multiplied. Daniel's phone, which he had always left casually on the kitchen counter, was now constantly in his pocket or face down whenever he set it aside. He started taking calls in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones that stopped the moment I approached. He began going to the gym more frequently, though he never seemed to lose any weight or gain any muscle. He bought new cologne, a scent I did not recognize, and when I asked about it, he said a colleague had recommended it. The worst part was not the suspicions forming in my mind. The worst part was who he seemed to be spending his time with. 3 weeks after the incident at his office, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a photo Becca had posted. It was innocuous on the surface, a shot of 2 glasses of wine at a restaurant I did not recognize, captioned, "Cheers to good company." Nothing about it should have alarmed me, but in the background, barely visible in the mirror behind the bar, I could make out the reflection of a man's arm. The watch on that wrist was distinctive, a Patek Philippe with a blue face and a brown leather strap, the same watch I'd given Daniel for our 5th anniversary. My heart began to pound. I zoomed in on the photo, squinting at the blurry reflection, trying to convince myself I was wrong, but I knew that watch. I had spent months saving for it. I had wrapped it myself and watched Daniel's face light up when he opened the box. I screenshot the photo before I could second-guess myself, then sat staring at my phone for what felt like hours. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Daniel had met Becca for a casual drink to discuss something. Maybe she was helping him plan a surprise for me. Maybe I was losing my mind and seeing threats where none existed. I called Becca that night, keeping my voice light and casual. "Hey, what did you do today?" She launched into a detailed account of her day. Meetings with clients, a trip to a tile showroom, a quiet evening at home catching up on television. She did not mention wine at a restaurant. She did not mention meeting anyone for drinks. She lied to me as easily as Daniel had. That night, I barely slept. I lay beside my husband, listening to his steady breathing, wondering who he really was, wondering who my best friend really was, wondering how long they had been lying to me and what else they might be hiding. The next few weeks were a masterclass in controlled paranoia. I became a detective in my own life, watching every interaction, cataloguing every inconsistency, building a case I desperately hoped I would not need. I checked Daniel's credit card statements and found charges at restaurants I had never heard of, jewelry stores I had never visited, a spa that offered couples massage packages. I noticed that Becca seemed to know things about my life that I had not told her, details about arguments Daniel and I had, about problems at my work, about my insecurities and fears. She knew because he was telling her, she knew because they were talking, probably for hours at a time, sharing secrets that should have stayed within my marriage. And she was using that information in ways I was only beginning to understand. The manipulation was subtle but pervasive. Becca would casually mention that I seemed stressed lately, then suggest that maybe I was working too hard, that maybe Daniel felt neglected. She would compliment my outfit, then add that Daniel probably preferred a softer look, something more feminine. She would ask about my marriage with concern in her voice, then plant seeds of doubt about whether Daniel and I were really right for each other. "Have you ever thought that maybe you two want different things?" she asked one afternoon as we walked through a farmer's market. "I mean, you are so career-focused, and Daniel seems like he wants a more traditional life. A wife who is more present, someone to take care of him." "Daniel has never said that to me," I replied, feeling defensive. She shrugged. "Maybe he does not feel like he can. You know how men are. They bottle things up. I just worry about you, Sarah. I want you to be happy." Every conversation with her became a minefield. She was planting ideas in my head, making me question my own marriage, my own worth, my own choices. And simultaneously, I later learned she was doing the same thing to Daniel, telling him I had complained about him, telling him I was thinking about divorce, telling him that he deserved someone who truly appreciated him. She was driving a wedge between us from both sides, positioning herself to catch whoever fell first. The confirmation I needed came 6 weeks later, on a night Daniel said he was attending a work conference in Boston. I had no reason to doubt him. He had shown me the conference materials, complained about the early flight, packed his suitcase with the irritated efficiency of a man who traveled too often for work. But something felt wrong. A tickle in my gut. A voice in my head whispering that this was too convenient. I called in sick to work the next day and drove to the hotel where Daniel had supposedly booked his room. The Ritz-Carlton, a place I knew well from my own business trips. I parked in the garage and walked into the lobby with confidence, wearing sunglasses and a hat that partially obscured my face. I did not know what I expected to find. Part of me was convinced I would see nothing, that my suspicions were baseless, that I would drive home and apologize to the universe for doubting my husband. I found a seat at the lobby bar and ordered a drink I did not intend to finish. From my vantage point, I could see the elevator bank and part of the main corridor leading to the conference rooms. I waited, sipping slowly, checking my phone phone to appear casual. An hour passed, then 2. I was beginning to feel foolish, about to give up, when the elevator doors opened and my world collapsed. Daniel stepped out, wearing the blue sweater I had bought him for Christmas. His hand was at the small of Becca's back, guiding her forward in a gesture of intimate familiarity. She was laughing at something he had said, her head tilted toward his, her body language radiating possession. They walked through the lobby without seeing me, 2 people clearly comfortable in their betrayal, blind to everything except each other. I watched them until they disappeared through the revolving doors. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up. The confrontation I had imagined never happened that day. I drove home in a daze, my mind fractured between rage, grief, and a strange, cold clarity. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made a decision. I would not confront them, not yet. Not until I understood the full scope of what they had done, and not until I had a plan. Because if there is one thing I learned from watching my parents' brutal divorce, it is that the person who acts on emotion loses. The person who plans wins. I spent the next 3 months gathering evidence with the patience of a surgeon and the precision of a prosecutor. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Chen, a friend of a colleague who came highly recommended for his discretion and thoroughness. I told him everything, watching his expression remain professionally neutral as I described my best friend's betrayal and my husband's lies. Marcus was expensive, but worth every dollar. Within 2 weeks, he had documentation of 7 meetings between Daniel and Becca at various hotels in New York and Connecticut. He had photographs of them holding hands, kissing in parking garages, entering the same room together. He had records of gifts Daniel had purchased for her, expensive items charged to a credit card I did not know existed. But the most devastating evidence came from Becca's phone. I am not proud of how I obtained it. During one of her visits to my home, I slipped away to the bathroom with her purse, claiming I needed to borrow a hair tie. I had purchased a device online, a simple data extraction tool that copied the contents of her phone in less than 3 minutes. It was illegal, and I knew it, but I also knew that what she was doing to me was a crime of a different kind, and I was willing to bend the rules to expose it. The messages between Daniel and Becca went back 14 months. 14 months of lies, of plans, of calculated destruction. Reading them felt like being stabbed over and over, each word a fresh wound. Daniel complained about me constantly. He said I was cold, too focused on my career, unable to give him the attention he needed. Becca validated every complaint, agreed with every criticism, positioned herself as the warm, understanding alternative. She told him I did not deserve him. She told him he was wasting his best years on a woman who would never change. She told him she had loved him since the day we got married and had spent years waiting for him to see what was right in front of him. The most sickening part was how deliberate her strategy had been. She had documented her progress like a project plan. In one message to a friend I did not recognize, she wrote, "Phase 2 is almost complete. He's emotionally dependent on me now. Sarah doesn't suspect a thing. By this time next year, I'll be the one living in that house." Phase 2. She had phases. She was systematically dismantling my marriage with the same methodical approach she used for her design projects, and Daniel, weak and ego-driven, had played right into her hands. The financial evidence was equally damning. Over the past 14 months, Daniel had transferred nearly $200,000 to Becca, ostensibly for design work on our home that had never happened. He had co-signed on a luxury car for her. He had paid off her credit card debt. He had funded her lifestyle while lying to me about our savings, claiming we needed to tighten our budget due to market volatility. I had been subsidizing my own betrayal without knowing it. As the evidence mounted, so did my plan. I consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys before settling on one. A woman named Judith Crane, who had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and a personal grudge against cheating spouses after her own husband left her for his secretary. Judith looked at my evidence and smiled. "This is going to be satisfying," she said. Together, we crafted a strategy that would protect my assets, expose their affair, and ensure that both Daniel and Becca faced consequences for what they had done. Judith advised me to document everything, to act normally around Daniel and Becca, to give them no indication that I knew. She told me to let them grow comfortable in their deception while I built an airtight case. For 4 more months, I played the role of the oblivious wife. I smiled at Daniel across the dinner table. I hugged Becca when she came to visit. I listened to their lies with a patience I did not know I possessed. Every night I updated my files, recorded conversations when legally permissible, and watched as they dug themselves deeper into a hole from which there would be no escape. The hardest part was the emotional toll. There were nights I cried until I could not breathe. There were mornings I woke up and forgot, just for a moment, that my entire life was a lie. There were times I wanted to scream the truth in both their faces and watch them crumble. But I held on. I reminded myself that the best revenge is served cold. I reminded myself that every day of patience was an investment in their eventual destruction. The turning point came when I discovered Becca's final plan. It happened by accident during one of her visits to my home. She excused herself to take a phone call and stepped into the backyard, unaware that the baby monitor we had bought years ago in preparation for children we never had was still active and streaming to my phone. I listened from the upstairs bedroom as she spoke to someone named Vanessa, her voice low and excited. "It's happening faster than I expected," she said. "Daniel is going to ask her for a divorce next month. He's already talked to a lawyer. By spring, I'll be engaged. By next fall, I'll be living in this house. Everything Sarah built is going to be mine." My hands shook as I listened to her laugh about how gullible I was, how easy it had been to manipulate both of us, how she had waited her entire life to finally have what she deserved. She talked about the wedding she was already planning in her head, about how she would redecorate my home once it was hers, about how she had already decided which of my furniture to keep and which to throw away. "Sarah never appreciated any of it," she said. "She doesn't know how lucky she's been. But karma is coming for her, and I'm going to be the one to deliver it." Karma. She actually used that word, as if she were the instrument of justice rather than the architect of betrayal. I saved the recording and added it to my file. Then I adjusted my timeline. If Daniel was planning to ask for a divorce next month, I needed to move first. The following week, I took the first step in my own plan. I met with my supervisor and requested a transfer to our company's Chicago office. It was a lateral move, no promotion, but it came with a relocation package and a fresh start far from the wreckage of my current life. My supervisor was surprised but supportive. She did not ask why I wanted to leave, and I did not volunteer the information. I also began quietly liquidating assets. Our joint accounts were substantial, and while I could not legally take more than my fair share, I could protect what was mine. I moved money into a trust my grandmother had set up for me decades ago, one that Daniel did not know existed. I transferred ownership of several investments into my parents' names, with the understanding that they would transfer them back after the divorce. I documented everything to ensure it would hold up in court. Daniel noticed nothing. He was too busy with Becca, too convinced of his own cleverness, too focused on the future he was planning without me. When I told him I was considering the Chicago transfer, he seemed relieved. "Maybe it would be good for you," he said, unable to meet my eyes. "A fresh start, new opportunities." He was so eager to get rid of me that he could barely contain himself. I smiled and told him I was still thinking about it. The exposure began 2 weeks before my planned departure, on the night of Daniel's company's annual holiday gala. It was a black tie affair, attended by partners, executives, and their spouses. Daniel had asked me to attend months ago, and I had agreed, knowing it would provide the perfect stage for what I had planned. I spent hours getting ready, choosing a dress that made me look confident and powerful, doing my makeup with more care than I had in months. When Daniel saw me, he looked uncomfortable, as if my beauty reminded him of what he was throwing away. "You look nice," he said without enthusiasm. "Thank you," I replied with a smile that did not reach my eyes. "Let's have a wonderful evening." We arrived at the gala and fell into the familiar rhythm of corporate socializing. Daniel introduced me to colleagues. I made small talk with their wives. We posed for photographs with practiced smiles. No one suspected that we were standing on the edge of an explosion. The first part of my plan unfolded at 8:30, exactly as I had arranged. Judith Crane approached us near the bar, dressed immaculately in a navy gown, looking every bit the high-powered attorney she was. "Daniel Mitchell?" she asked, extending her hand. Daniel looked confused. "Yes. My name is Judith Crane. I represent your wife in the matter of your divorce." Daniel's face went white. Around us, conversations stuttered as people turned to watch. Judith handed him an envelope. "You've been served. I suggest you review the contents with your own attorney before we proceed." She walked away before Daniel could respond, leaving him holding the envelope like it was a bomb. His eyes found mine, wide with shock, searching for an explanation. "Sarah, what is this? What is she talking about?" "Open it," I said calmly. "Everything you need to know is inside." He tore open the envelope with shaking hands, pulling out the papers within. I watched his expression change as he read. Confusion, then fear, then something close to panic. The petition outlined everything: the affair, the financial misconduct, the 14 months of deception, the $200,000 he had stolen from our marriage to fund his mistress. "Sarah," he whispered, "I can explain." "No," I said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You cannot explain, because there is no explanation for what you and Rebecca have done to me. But do not worry. I am not going to make a scene. I am going to leave now, and you are going to stay here and face all these people who just watched your wife serve you with divorce papers at your company's biggest event of the year. And tomorrow, when you go to work, everyone is going to know exactly what kind of man you are." I picked up my clutch and walked toward the exit, aware of the murmurs spreading through the room like wildfire. Behind me, I heard Daniel calling my name, but I did not stop. I did not look back. I had already given that man 7 years of my life. He did not deserve another second. The second part of my plan unfolded the following morning. I had sent an email the night before to 15 of Becca's most prominent clients, including the one who had originally launched her career. The email contained a carefully curated selection of her text messages, specifically the ones where she mocked her clients, complained about their taste, and laughed about overcharging them for work she claimed was beneath her. By noon, 3 of those clients had terminated their contracts with her. By evening, 2 more had done the same and were threatening legal action over the fees they had paid for substandard work. By the end of the week, Rebecca Holloway's design business was in ruins, her reputation destroyed by her own words. But I was not finished. The third part of my plan targeted Becca's new relationship with Daniel. With him out of my home and facing a divorce that would cost him significantly thanks to his documented financial infidelity, Becca expected to step into the role of his savior, the woman who would stand by him through his troubles. What she did not expect was the packet I sent to Daniel's parents. I had met Frank and Dorothy Mitchell only a handful of times, but I knew them to be strict Catholics who valued family, loyalty, and traditional morality. I knew Daniel had always sought their approval and that their opinion mattered to him more than he liked to admit. The packet contained copies of everything: the affair, the messages, the photographs, the financial records. I included a personal letter explaining what their son had done and expressing my hope that they would encourage him to seek the help he clearly needed. I did not ask them to punish him. I simply provided them with the truth and let them draw their own conclusions. Frank Mitchell called Daniel the day he received the packet. I do not know exactly what was said, but I know that Daniel was not invited to Christmas dinner that year for the first time in his life. I know that Dorothy Mitchell sent me a card expressing her sympathy and her shame over her son's behavior. I know that Daniel lost not just his wife, but the respect of the family he had always tried so hard to please. The fallout for Becca was even more severe. Without her business income, she could not afford the apartment Daniel had been helping her pay for. Without Daniel's financial support, which ended abruptly when his lawyers advised him to cut all ties, she was forced to move back in with her mother, the same mother whose husband had made Becca feel unwelcome as a teenager, the same house she had spent her entire adult life trying to escape. Her social circle, which had always overlapped with mine, quickly chose sides. Our mutual friends, horrified by what she had done, stopped returning her calls. Her Instagram, once a showcase of her successful career and glamorous life, went silent. Within 3 months, Rebecca Holloway had lost everything she had worked for, everything she had stolen, and everything she had hoped to gain. But the most satisfying consequence came 6 months later, when I received a phone call from Marcus Chen. "I thought you would want to know," he said. "Rebecca and Daniel broke up. Apparently things got ugly once the money ran out. He blamed her for the divorce becoming public. She blamed him for not fighting harder to protect her. They had a screaming match in a restaurant that ended with her throwing wine in his face. Several people filmed it. It's all over social media." I thanked Marcus and ended the call, feeling something I had not expected: peace. I had spent months fueled by anger, months planning and executing a revenge I believed I needed to heal. But in that moment, I realized that the revenge had not been the point. The point had been proving to myself that I was not a victim. The point had been taking back the power they had stolen from me. The point had been ensuring that their betrayal would not define my future, only theirs. The divorce was finalized 8 months after I served Daniel at the gala. Thanks to Judith's expertise and the overwhelming evidence of his misconduct, I received far more than I had expected. The house was sold, and I took 70% of the proceeds. My retirement accounts remained untouched. Daniel was ordered to repay the $200,000 he had diverted to Becca, a debt that would follow him for years. I moved to Chicago as planned. I bought a condo overlooking the lake, decorated it in my own style without a single reminder of Becca's influence. I threw myself into my work, earned a promotion I had been chasing for years, and built a new life in a city where no one knew my story unless I chose to tell them. Some nights, in those early months, I still cried. Grief does not follow a schedule. It ambushes you in quiet moments, reminds you of what you lost even when you know you are better off without it. I grieved the marriage I thought I had. I grieved the friendship that had been a lie longer than I wanted to admit. I grieved the naive woman I used to be, the one who trusted too easily and saw the best in everyone. But grief is not forever. Neither is anger. Eventually, both faded into something softer, something that felt like wisdom rather than pain. I ran into Becca once, about 2 years after everything ended. I was back in New York for a conference, walking through Central Park on a rare free afternoon, when I saw her sitting alone on a bench. She had aged in ways that surprised me. Her hair was dull, her clothes plain, her posture defeated. She looked like a woman who had been broken by the weight of her own choices. She saw me too. Our eyes met across the path, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. I expected to feel something. Rage, satisfaction, pity. Instead, I felt nothing. She was a stranger now, someone from a chapter of my life that I had closed. She had no power over me anymore. She never would again. I nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than greeting, and continued walking. I did not look back. 3 years after my divorce, I met someone new. His name is Thomas. He is a journalist, thoughtful and kind, with a patience I did not know I needed. We took things slowly, both of us carrying scars from previous relationships. I told him everything about what had happened with Daniel and Becca, and he listened without judgment. "You did what you had to do," he said when I finished, "and you came out stronger. That's not something to be ashamed of." Thomas and I were married last spring, in a small ceremony on the shores of Lake Michigan. My parents were there, my new friends from Chicago were there, my colleague who had first introduced me to Marcus Chen was there, Becca was not there. Daniel was not there, and for the first time in years, I did not think about them at all. I sometimes wonder if Becca ever understood what she lost when she chose to betray me. Not just the friendship, though, that would have been enough. Not just the career I helped destroy, though she certainly felt that loss. But something deeper, the chance to be known, the chance to be loved for who she truly was, rather than who she pretended to be. The chance to build something real instead of stealing what others had built. She spent her whole life wanting what I had without realizing that what I had was the result of choices she could have made too. Kindness, honesty, hard work, loyalty. These are not gifts bestowed on the lucky few. They are decisions made every day, in every interaction, by people who choose integrity over envy. Becca chose envy. She chose manipulation. She chose to destroy rather than create. And in the end, she was left with exactly what those choices deserved. Nothing. I do not believe in karma as some mystical force that balances the universe, but I do believe in consequences. I believe that the lies we tell eventually become prisons we cannot escape. I believe that the people we hurt carry pieces of us with them, and sometimes those pieces grow into weapons that return when we least expect them. Becca and Daniel thought they were building a future together. Instead, they were planting the seeds of their own destruction. Every lie they told, every secret they kept, every betrayal they committed became evidence that I used to take back my life and take away theirs. If you are listening to this and you recognize parts of your own story in mine, I want you to know that you are not alone. I want you to know that the shock and the pain and the rage you are feeling are all normal. I want you to know that there is a path forward, even when you cannot see it. But more than anything, I want you to know that you have more power than they want you to believe. The people who betray us count on our silence. They count on our shame. They count on us being too broken to fight back. They underestimate us because our trust made us seem weak. They are wrong. Our trust was not weakness, it was strength that they exploited. And when we take that strength back, when we channel it into protecting ourselves and exposing the truth, we become something they never expected. We become the ones who win. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I was betrayed by the two people I trusted most in the world. But I am not a victim. I am not broken. I am not defined by what they did to me. I am defined by what I did after. And what I did was survive. What I did was fight. What I did was build a life so beautiful that it eclipses everything they tried to take from me. If you are in the darkness right now, hold on. The light is coming, and when it arrives, you will be ready to step into it. Stronger than you have ever been. That is my story. That is my truth. And if there is any justice in this world, it is the truth that sets us free while the liars remain trapped in the cages of their own making. Thank you for listening, and remember, betrayal is not the end of your story. It is only the beginning of a new chapter, one where you finally get to be the hero,